What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Bernard for Reels, and on this video, I'm going to be talking about 5 podcasts that you should listen to if you want to level up in this year, 2022. Now, ever since podcast was created in the year 2004, this form of consumable media has been growing progressively. And by a recent survey done, we have about 300 million active podcast listeners currently. What makes podcasts so interesting, unlike other media sources like, let's say, watching TV or reading, is because you can basically eat, you can cook, you can run, you can jog, you can go to the gym, you can even sit right next to that person that bores the life out of you and still enjoy a really nice podcast. In essence, podcast is the epitome of multitask consumption. And with all information sources, there are things that you can do to make your consumption a whole lot more productive and beneficial. So I just want you to sit back and enjoy 5 podcasts that you should listen to level up. The first podcast in this video is The School of Greatness by Lewis Howes. Now, for those of you who don't know who Lewis Howes is a former professional American footballer turned lifestyle entrepreneur. Now, he launched his podcast in the year 2013, and ever since then, this podcast is ranked among the top 100 podcasts in the world, with over 1,000 episodes and 100 million downloads. Now, by the name Skill of Greatness, Lewis Howes has managed to create a podcast that interviews successful people in different walks of life. Now, this includes the likes of Sadhguru, Kobe Bryant, Wayne Hoff, Mike Todd, and even Hollywood celebrities. A really interesting feature about Lewis Howes is that he has a way of asking questions that have been dancing around in your mind if you ever got the chance to actually be in the same room with whoever he's interviewing. And the fact that he's interviewing high achievers, you actually get to listen to a lot of deep insights on how those people operate and how they actually create frameworks to solve problems in their lives. And the really fun part of his episodes with these people is the last part of it. This part of the podcast involves him asking his guests 3 things that they would leave behind if they had to take every single thing that they have left on the planet. It's at that point that you really get to see the back room of like how this high achievers really think and the deep-seated psychologies behind their high achievement. Please don't forget to like the video if you like it and subscribe if you like this type of content. Now, let's continue. Now, the next podcast in this video is the Garyvee audio experience. Now, for those of you who don't know who Garyvee is, he's one of the most prominent social media entrepreneurs out there. And for those of you who do know who he is, I'm sure you probably know him for his hustle and grind videos on Instagram or TikTok. Now, a really interesting thing about his podcast is that you actually get to learn the perspective of someone who has been posting in the internet basically when the internet was a baby. He actually even goes down to talk about like deep problems that people have, like facing family and friends and even people that they don't even know online, and how we can actually go about dealing with hate online. And not just even about social media and the internet, like he actually also goes down to talk about happiness and work and how we can actually try to be more self-aware. Now, if you really go through his episodes, you're actually going to see some really common threads in his episodes. The one that really sticks out is not caring what other people think of you. And if you're into that kind of stuff, please be my guest. It's really nice. Every episode on the Garyvee audio experience, there is always a nugget to be learned. Now, the next podcast on this list is How I Built This by Garyvee from NPR. Now, this podcast is perfect for you if you've ever wondered, what did it really take the entrepreneurs to build those big companies from scratch? Now, Garyvee doesn't just give you the knowledge, you actually get to hear it from the horse's mouth. Basically from the people who actually built the companies. Now, this podcast is really cool in the sense that you actually appreciate the untold stories of founders of these great companies. Now, these companies include Spanx, Instagram, LinkedIn, Southwestern Airlines, Lyft, Airbnb, and like the list goes on and on and on. Like you actually get to hear the real backstory to how these big companies actually started. Now, the next podcast on this list is Throughline by NPR. If you're a history junkie, you're actually going to love this podcast. And if you're not, you are going to learn a lot of things from this podcast. And it's interesting. They basically make history fun. Now, personally, I'm a believer of the proponent that to actually understand the present, you need to first understand the past. And like Throughline actually goes to do just that. They basically explain big historical events that have literally shaped culture as we know it, and like how they came about, the players involved, and like what they did every step of the way. And the really interesting thing about Throughline is that they actually even talk about recent events. Now, if you're really into what's going on, there's actually an episode on Throughline about Putin. Really interesting stuff. Now, the fifth podcast on this list is My First Million by Sampar and Shan Puri. Now, if you're into businesses and like startups and stuff like that, like you're going to love this podcast because they basically break down new businesses that are springing up in the 21st century as we know it. And they even explain how you yourself, as a normal average person, can actually start those businesses if we so desire. This podcast is one of the few podcasts out there that you can literally get a $1 million idea just by listening to it. And guys, there's a bonus podcast, and this podcast is the Apostle Joseph Solomon podcast. I'm a proponent of the fact that you cannot really completely level up if you haven't leveled up in all areas of life, and that includes spiritual. For those of you who don't know who Apostle Joseph Solomon is, he's a Nigerian gospel minister, and personally, I like him because he has a way of breaking down biblical concepts into really practical ways in our day-to-day lives. He talks about concepts like tithing, sowing and reaping, humility, honor, and how we can actually go about applying them in our lives and how they relate to our spiritual lives in general. And guys, question of the day: if you have podcasts that you've listened to that have completely changed your life and may help you level up, please put it on the comments below so we can also level up and join you in your state of enlightenment. And guys, if you like this video, please like, and if you like type of content, please subscribe, and you may like a video somewhere on the end screen. And remember guys, to always keep it real. Bye guys.